welcome to all of our members this morning, IOPSA members, as well as those who are joining in just to listen to these Toolbox Talks. So to start off with, the tips to continually prevent COVID-19. These tips are obviously going to be mentioned very often, but not just in connection with COVID-19. In fact, regular hygiene, washing of our hands, making sure that everything is kept neat, tidy, and housekeeping, which is our Toolbox Talk topic for this morning, is obviously something that we discuss on a daily basis, not just because of COVID-19, but because of other hazardous biological agents, hazardous biological substances, or even the chemicals that we use. All of these have a potential to cause ill health. And so good housekeeping, good hygiene is always valuable when it comes to health and safety. So this morning, as we mentioned, we are discussing housekeeping. So the safety thought for this week is a place for everything and everything in its place always, which is the motto for housekeeping. And this is the last Toolbox Talk for February 2020. And we look forward to next month coming up, different Toolbox Talks coming up, as well as the start of that prime course for all IOPSA members. So remember, this is going to be like a mentorship program for you. It is going to be released on Tuesday next week, which is the 1st of March. But please look out for some interesting things that are also coming up throughout the rest of the year. Even if you do not do the entire prime course, you can do the short courses that are basically in line with a prime course. So the way it's designed is to allow you to receive a certificate after you've achieved a certain course. So if you've done the HIRA, if you've done the SHE-REP, if you've done the legal liabilities, if you've done the emergency or incident investigation, all of these will give you short certificates. They're valid for 2 years. They come with CPD points from SIOSH as well. And what that helps you to do is build in your profile for occupational health and safety for a company and individually. So please look out for this. If you don't have time to do the entire prime course, perhaps you can choose some of the short courses that are inside the prime course to be able to assist you, your employees, or even if you are not an IOPSA member, and perhaps you just want to pay for an online course that's got good content. It's going to be general, not specific to plumbing only. We'll also assist you in that way to have these online courses available. But to get into our Toolbox Talk for this morning on housekeeping, as we mentioned, that motto or the definition of housekeeping, a place for everything and everything in its place always. Now, what is housekeeping? Is it just about mops, buckets, and as you see there on the picture on the right-hand side, is it only about cleaning? Well, no. Housekeeping in general means we should have good lighting in our environment. You see, good lighting helps us to see clearly. It helps us to be able to perform the job properly. And it also helps us to identify whether the area around us is safe for us to be in it. You see, without good lighting, we wouldn't be able to see those risks. We won't be able to see the hazards. And obviously, we are not going to be able to see if the work that we are performing is good quality. And so good lighting goes hand in hand with housekeeping, the same as good ventilation. Now, why is lighting and ventilation so important? Well, in terms of housekeeping, keeping things neat, keeping things tidy, keeping things in its place, good lighting helps us then, first of all, to see whether it is possible in order to do this. And good ventilation helps us to have oxygen that is clean and fresh air in order for us not to be inhaling pathogens or bacteria, things like that, that will cause ill health. Again, this is all part of housekeeping. Now, when we talk about good ventilation, we're talking about open windows for natural ventilation. And then on the mechanical ventilation side, we encourage you to make sure that any air cons or any HVAC units that you are using have been cleaned and well maintained often. Now, the installation company that's performing this for you, the manufacturer that you bought these units from, they will give you the prescribed guidelines on how to maintain them and how to keep them clean. This should all be part of your housekeeping procedure or routine within your company. Then your hygiene facilities to be kept clean. So the things that clean should be kept clean. So if you take a look on the right-hand side here, we're talking about kitchens, toilets, and anything that is used to ensure we are maintained in a hygienic manner. All of this should also be kept clean. So please don't forget, once we have used a mop and a bucket, or perhaps what we call a scoopy, if you've used that, please also ensure that it is kept clean. We never want to clean something up, allow that to touch the cleaning equipment, and then not clean the cleaning equipment, because then obviously the cleaning equipment is just going to be laying around and spreading germs and spreading viruses. And this is really one of the biggest problems that we have found, specifically when we look at plumbers, buckies rather, as well as the areas where the plumbers will be going in to eat, to look after themselves, to get dressed in the morning. It's these areas that might look clean from the outside, but really when we delve into it, it is not specifically cleaned according to some sort of routine or some sort of safe working procedure. So remember, although you might have a routine that is generalized, it's specific, it's often very theoretical. You see, we've spoken to a few plumbers, we've been onto a few sites, and we've asked them, can you please show us your housekeeping procedure? Many say, we have a procedure, but it is not documented. Everybody knows the procedure. And when we speak to the employees, not everyone knows the procedure. You see, some of them say this, some of them say that. And once we've spoken to everyone, we have a general idea that everybody pretty much just does what they're used to doing at home, trying to clean as best as possible. But that is not sufficient. Minimum requirements says you must have a procedure for housekeeping. So time must be set aside in order to perform housekeeping. Things like aisles and storage areas that need to be clearly marked. Stacking and storage practices all falls within a housekeeping procedure. Now, this means that it needs to be checked on. So once housekeeping is performed, we also need to have a checklist in place in order to see whether the stacked goods are not endangering life. So what would this mean? Well, the type of stacking and storage that you are performing obviously needs to make sure that it is not obstructing any exits. It doesn't obstruct any firefighting equipment. It doesn't obstruct any areas where you need to work or you need to walk. So it needs to be stacked in an appropriate manner. But even the way the stacks are designed, are they designed in such a manner that the top stack cannot fall over? If we accidentally bump into it, it's not going to topple over and engulf a person or crush a person. You see, all of these are things that needs to be checked on a regular basis. What about our yards, our vehicles? You see, we often look just at the working environment. Where I'm standing and performing my work, I'm going to keep my area clean. But it is an employee's responsibility, the worker's responsibility, to keep the entire premises clean. Our premises, or the definition of premises or workplace, includes yards as well as vehicles in and around your company. And then refuse, anything that you throw away must be thrown into a bin. And these bins for general refuse, you're going to obviously have it within your own company. You can have a general one, you can have a recycle one, but then you're also going to have one for hazardous substances. So hazardous chemicals, it could be biological agents. Depending on your scope of work within your company, you might have ones specific to the type of chemical or the type of waste that you are going to be throwing away. Now, this means that you need to clearly identify what type of waste you are throwing away. So housekeeping is a lot more involved within a company, or there's a lot more involved in housekeeping procedures than just taking a mop and bucket and going to go and clean the floors and wash the windows. It's a lot more specific and a lot more that needs to be done, including something that many people forget is the type of waste management that we are performing as well. Again, it must not be theoretical. It has to be a documented procedure on how your company goes about ensuring that waste is discarded of. So what are some of the benefits then of having good housekeeping? Well, first of all, time is saved by not having to search for things. You see, if the tools are in the correct place, we are not going to use a substandard tool or an incorrect tool because we cannot find the right tool. Why? Because housekeeping was not in place. You see, if you couldn't find it, then you're probably going to use something else that is not the correct tool or something that is more inferior. Now, injuries are prevented because passages and workplaces are free from superfluous materials. In other words, there's nothing laying around that's going to obstruct our movement, especially when you're in the zone. You know, many plumbers get in the zone, they're busy working out something, they're working out measurements, and they're walking toward the bucky, and then they trip over the toolbox. Well, this is because of poor housekeeping. If we had good housekeeping, we wouldn't trip over anything because the walkways would be kept clear, especially working on scaffolding, working in the aisles. Many of you plumbers have to go into servitude areas. These servitude areas are not designed to have 50 people inside of them. They are very narrow, they are cramped, often defined as a confined space. These areas must be kept clean and free of any clutter. Then also space is saved if articles are neatly packed and correctly stored. The risk of fire is diminished when provision is made for the correct placing of the right type of refuse bins. Storage areas comply with good storage practices, and stacking is done in accordance with accepted stacking practices. So we are looking at time saving, injury saving, space saving, and fire risk saving. We can really see the benefits of housekeeping here. So what are some practical steps for you as plumbers? What are you going to be doing over the next few days? Well, for one, go and take a look at any passages, aisles, walkways. Are they marked? Are they kept clear of obstacles to prevent workers and visitors from injuries? Now, if you're working on a site, obviously you need to make sure that you have your own waste bins so that any general waste is not cluttered and spread around the entire environment where you're working, but you have performed waste management for yourself and your own task. If there is no waste bins, workers tend to throw waste materials and papers on the floor. Now, this will first of all create a fire hazard in the workplace, but secondly, it just brings down your reputation as an employee, as a company as a whole. Reputation is a very important thing, especially as a plumber. All spillages, so anything we spill, must be cleaned and cleared immediately to prevent workers from slipping or being contaminated if chemicals are involved. So when working in a waste area, perhaps you are spraying back the waste pipes and you've got a little bit of splashback of that hazardous biological agent or any waste materials. Please remember to try and clean this up as soon as possible. The pathogens that are contained in there are going to be seriously risky for ill health. But not only that, somebody could slip or trip over these chemicals or liquids that are spilt. Then report any unusual parcels or packages to your security. So obviously we do not want to just move something that we are not aware of from a fire, explosion, or even arson perspective. We want to look after incidents and accidents from an emergency perspective as well. Then place everything in the correct place and store all products correctly. Now, if you're not sure how to store it, generally the articles that you are purchasing, if it's chemicals, they will tell you how to store it out of direct sunlight, not with other chemicals, or do your research and find out what chemicals I do use and how to store them correctly. Some boxes will have a this way up sign, so you can only store it in that method. So if you don't have that guideline, what do you need to do? Just forget about it altogether and do what you want? No, take the time out, find the correct information, ask for the correct information. And remember, there's nothing wrong with asking. Once you ask and you get the answer, now you know. And then the next time you can do it like that again. Then clean up your workplace at the end of every shift. Do not leave it for the follow-up shift to clean. Now remember, guys, and I'm talking to employees specifically, you are the one creating the mess. So you are the one responsible for cleaning up that mess. Even if you have a cleaning crew, even if you have a housekeeper on site, remember it's still important for you to look after the area that you're working. Now we've got a little video that we want to show you. There's no bad things in this video, so anybody can watch it. But we want to see what is the importance of housekeeping. If we had to lose something that's important, is it really necessary for us to look at housekeeping. So I don't know anybody that has ever misplaced their child, but we can see the importance of tidying up and cleaning up. Housekeeping is very important. So that message there about tidy up shows us the importance of housekeeping and ensuring that everything has a place and everything should be in its place. We never want to be searching for that very important piece of equipment or tool and not being able to find it. We are wasting our time. We are causing ourselves undue pressure and anxiety, as well as the potential for the risk of using the wrong materials, the wrong equipment, or the wrong tools. Now, getting a little bit into the legislative side of housekeeping, there are certain principles that have to be abided by in the construction area. So if you are working in construction, if you're on a site and you fall within the construction regulations. Now, this could mean that you are not on a construction site specifically, but you are performing a scope of work that falls within the construction regulations on a site outside of construction. So you've gone into a corporate environment, you're working at a bank, and the bank says that the work that you are going to perform, that invoice that you have submitted, and the scope of work on that invoice falls within construction. Then construction regulation 27 affects you, and you have to abide by it. Now, it states that a contractor must ensure, please remember, the must ensure is minimum requirements. In other words, you have to ensure this. It's not a suggestion. It's not a maybe, depending, look at your risk assessment. It is 100%. You must ensure that suitable housekeeping is continuously implemented on each construction site. Now, again, as we mentioned, construction site means a place or workplace where construction work is being performed. So don't feel just because you don't see tower cranes and huge scaffolding that you are not in a construction environment. If you are performing work that falls within construction, then Section 27 applies to you. So what are those applicable principles? Well, number one is the proper storage of materials and equipment. Number two is the removal of scrap, waste, and debris at appropriate intervals. Appropriate means if it's getting to the point where it is getting in the way, then it's not being done enough. So they are not going to tell you every hour, every 15 minutes, because that really depends on how much waste you are accumulating. Then ensuring that materials required for use are not placed on the site so as to obstruct a means of access or egress from the workplace. And this is not at any time. Now, please remember, you cannot say, well, it's only for a few minutes. It's going to be moved now. We have this beautiful saying in South Africa, we'll do it now. Do you know what now means? It means it's going to be obstructed even for a time. Now, the construction regulation says ensuring that they are not placed on site so as to obstruct. Anytime, not even for a short period of time when somebody is going to do it now. The fourth thing is ensuring that construction sites in built-up areas adjacent to public ways are suitably and sufficiently fenced off to and ensure that they are provided with controlled access points to prevent entry of unauthorized persons. Now, you might think, well, how is access control part of housekeeping principles? Well, that is because the construction site itself, because work is being performed there, although housekeeping in your environment is very important and you are keeping it clean, there are still works, materials, and tools laying in their correct areas that visitors to that site could still fall over and be obstructed with. So when you are working, and it's not a construction site, you're not going to be putting a fence up. Like we mentioned, you're working at a bank. You are in the third floor in the men's bathrooms. You need to then close off the men's bathroom. So you do not want anybody to come in there because you are performing works inside there, which means even that suitably and sufficiently fenced off could just mean barrier tape that is placed across the door to show that nobody is allowed inside there. That is what the principle of housekeeping from construction regulations is trying to teach us. Then any catch platforms, nets erected around entrances, passageways where persons walk or pass under, all of these must be kept in a safe manner in order to ensure that the danger or possibility of persons being struck by any falling objects is 100% eliminated. So if you're working on a scaffolding and you are allowing people to walk under that scaffolding that are not part of your group of people, there are other contractors, visitors, or people that are working within that environment, you must ensure that you have some sort of catch platform if you are removing debris or taking debris away. If it's tools, then you are going to ensure that you have your tow board placed on that scaffold to prevent tools from falling off of that scaffold. So all of this is within housekeeping principles. So it's not just about a cloth and a little bit of detergent to ensure things are clean. It goes a lot further than that type of work. So please remember, any housekeeping principles need to be documented. They need to be put in place as soon as possible. And we need to have some sort of system in place. So let's take a look at this 5S system. The 5S system is sorting, keeping only necessary items in the workplace. So don't have unnecessary items in the area that will just clutter the working environment. Set it in order. Arrange items to promote efficient workflow. In other words, what is the most important thing? Heaviest things at the bottom, lighter things at the top. Then shine. Clean the work area so it is neat and tidy. Now that doesn't say before, after, it is at regular intervals. Standardize. Set standards for consistently organized workplace. In other words, that is documented. And then systemize. You need to maintain it and review those standards to see that it is a high quality of housekeeping for you within your company. So moving on to housekeeping in the workplace, 3 very important things that we want you to remember. Housekeeping is an important issue on all sites because, as well as for its safety purposes, a tidy job reflects the workmanship of the project. So again, we're talking about you, your reputation, and your workmanship. Each individual contractor is responsible for the removal of debris and keeping their area of work clean. It is your responsibility to keep your area clean. Then look after your own area, clean as you go. Do not leave hazards which place you or your workmates at risk. And never say it's somebody else's responsibility. Housekeeping is everyone's responsibility. Now, lastly, we just want to mention that housekeeping in your vehicle is also a critical part of workplace housekeeping. An extension of premises or workplace is your vehicle as well. Company vehicles are company property and thus fall under the same policies as a workplace. Now, vehicles are often taken to the site of your clients, which means they are being seen by your clients. Have you ever climbed out of your vehicle and your client was right there by the vehicle? You didn't expect him to be there. They just came to the vehicle to welcome you to their building and it wasn't in the neatest state. You didn't look at it, but in your peripherals, you kind of see all of this rubbish laying inside your vehicle and you're wondering, how does the person see it? What about on the public roads as you pass through on traffic? Are you littering? Are things falling out of your bakkie? Are things being torn off of your bakkie because it's not kept in good condition? Now we're going to ask, whose responsibility is that? Is it the employer, the owner of that bakkie? The company's owner is responsible for it. Or is it the person operating that vehicle? You see, because you are the one who uses it. You are the one who abuses it. So the driver, the employees, the workers, you are all responsible for that vehicle. Keeping it clean not only means hygienic, so you're going to work in an environment that is clean and tidy for yourself, but you are also taking away risks of getting infectious diseases, and not just COVID. We're talking about other diseases that have been here even before COVID-19 came in. Now, if there is a lot of junk inside the cab of the vehicle, especially by the driver's area, the risk of this getting stuck under the pedals or even under your feet increases, and this can create a hazardous environment. Not only that, the air that you are breathing is constantly made impure by all of the bacteria that is being built up in this vehicle and then flowing through the air vents. If it is not kept clean, you are not kept safe. So we look forward to March 2022. There are 5 weeks in March, so we are looking forward to next week. The value of training, and obviously that's going to be our very first Toolbox Talk for the year. The reason for that is the Prime course is a valuable asset to every single member plumber. And we are going to show you how training is of utmost importance to you and your employees. We're then going to be moving within the Prime course because risk assessment. So we're going to be looking at daily safe task instructions for this. We will also be giving you a template, how to do a daily safe task instruction and what it is meant when your company that you are working for, your clients or your customers request a DSTI from you. Then we are going to be looking at slipping and tripping hazards and some practical means to prevent that. Any caught between risks. So what does it mean to be caught between something and how can we prevent this from happening? And then we're going to be looking at the hazard and risk assessment around lifting and lowering of any objects and things. Specifically, for lifting and lowering, we are going to be looking at tanks. What type of tanks you are using to store water, or you're selling tanks to your clients. How are you lifting and lowering these types of tanks? So the safety thought again for this week, a place for everything and everything in its place always. Please keep good hygiene and housekeeping practices for your company. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. And just a reminder to all of those who are going to be registering for the Prime course, you will be receiving a link with all the information, a little video on what Prime is. So we thank you very much for reaching out to us already. We are not going to be releasing any of this information until the 1st of March, but please continue to send your emails and WhatsApps to us. We are keeping that database, and as soon as the day arrives, we will send you all of that information to make it available to you. But thank you to those who have already submitted their information. Have a good week, and thank you to all our members.